Well, hello, hello. How are you?
Good, thanks, Paul. How are you?
Doing great. So great to see you here. I guess we're getting close to Christmas time here.
Very festive. I like it.
Yeah, well, you brought us an early Christmas treat with this movie. Of course, we've loved Placebo for years, but now of course we get to find out a little bit more because as they say in the beginning, they weren't really sure that they wanted all the fame, but they got it. So that must make for an interesting and well, maybe sometimes difficult a documentary subject, right?
100%. Yeah, I was talking about this earlier on. I was saying it's like I think Placebo's a band that never really likes to kind of look back, which I think is tricky if you're trying to tell some of the story of the band. But I think in this project, I think my ambition and the band's aligned in this sense of I think we were trying to tell the story more on where the band are now, and who they are and what they're interested in focus on at this moment. And I more use some of the history of the band as a kind of lens through which to discuss that and kind of highlight the fact that I guess they're at a point where they're continuing a conversation they started a long time ago.
Well, but the thing is, I've met them, I've talked to them before. Very, very nice guys, and very, very interesting, sweet people, But I guess getting them to open up, or shoot,
Yeah.
even getting them to agree to promote this, is that's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think I learned, more and more as the project went on that, I think that both Brian and Stefan are very private individuals that really kind of value their privacy. And, Brian talks about it in the film. He says like he's an introvert, he's actually kind of this like juxtaposition of an individual of like he gets on stage and he's got this extroverted rock star side of him, but he's also got this kind of shy introverted side to him. So I think that was a challenge and a kind of interesting challenge within the film to be able to kind of encourage them to kind of be open and honest, and kind of open themselves up for the film, I guess. But I was struck by, even though I think for them at times it was kind of difficult and it wasn't natural to them, they really bought into the idea of kind of giving creative control to me. And if I said, I think it's important to the film that we just go warts and all and show everything and we kind of open up. They kind of trusted in the creative side of it, I think, and understood that maybe it was important for the project, even if it wasn't comfortable for them, which I think, should be really commended.
Well, a kind of night and day from Liam Gallagher, who you worked with as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they are. We were talking about this again of like, Oasis, an incredible band, but it's like throughout the career they've kind of been these like, polar opposite ends. It's like, that was when they first came out, that was right in the height of like Britpop Oasis moment, and then, Placebo arrive on the scene and they're just like almost the antithesis to that kind of macho, Britpop movement that was going on.
Yeah, but still you're probably excited about the reunion like anybody else, right?
Of course. I mean, but this is the thing. Like, I love Oasis. I'm not saying anything against Oasis. I think an amazing, incredible rock band. But it's that way where I think it's more that sense of Placebo felt like something different to individuals in that time, and I think that's so exciting that it's like, while this huge kind of global movement of like everything that's coming out of the UK was this like Oasis, Blur, movement, and then suddenly this band appears that just feels like completely different to and kind of going against the tide. And I think that what you said yourself, you've spoken to the guys, and it's like, I think that's something they kind of relish. They like to be the ones that are pulling in the different direction. I think that I think Brian gets a great thrill from that, which is what I think it's one of the things that makes them really exciting as a band.
So what was the song, or maybe it was a video, what was it that drew you to Placebo? Was there, do you remember that first song you heard, or like, who is this?
Yeah, so I think probably Nancy Boy and Teenage Angst were kind of the first tracks that I probably discovered with Placebo, when I was younger. I think it was probably Without You I'm Nothing was the kind of album that came out when I was kind of in my teenage. And, you know, tracks like kind of Pure Morning and what have you. I was talking about that song earlier on, actually. I was saying, like, I think that song almost epitomizes some of, like, Brian's best lyrical work of, like, it kind of sums up that sense of this kind of really clever, intelligent, but with that kind of dry humor that Brian has that I absolutely love, you know?
And now, of course, people look up to they look up to what they do as well. But with what you do, telling great stories, you know, that's a whole nother thing that's very interesting to people and inspiring. And so, what kind of advice would you give to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps and tell great stories about the musicians that we love?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I think this project was interesting for me because it kind of became a bit of a journey of self-exploration as well, in that it started as a story about placebo, but it also has this kind of wider, you know, question that comes up through our discussions, which is really about the motivations of people making creative work and why people choose to do it, which meant that it ended up being a bit of a kind of journey of discovery for me as well. I guess in terms of advice for individuals, it's hard to give one set thing, and you know, I get asked this a lot. You know, young filmmakers will say, you know, how do I you know, break through, and what's the route? And I think really there's no exact, you know, path that you have to follow. I think the key thing is being excited by making work, and I think making is the greatest teacher and will guide you and will develop you through your career. So I think creating is the best thing you can possibly do, and you kind of your work will kind of guide your career, and I think all you can do is try and create in any way that you possibly can, and opportunities will come to you.
Yeah, well said. You know, my co-host Drew Pearson in American football is one of our greats. He caught the Hail Mary, won the Hall of Fame. Of course, we all know the Hail Mary term now, but we love to ask people their Hail Mary moment, which is that moment in your life or career where you just had to go for it, worked out for you. Maybe it's this, maybe it's something else. What do you suppose it was for you?
Wow, that's a question. I think there was. I think the Liam Gallagher film was actually quite a kind of hairy one, where it was like, you know, I got asked about this idea of, you know, Liam had this concept for doing a concert that was going to be played on a barge steaming up the Thames in the middle of lockdown London. And, you know, we couldn't have any rain cover over the barge, and if it started raining, all of our electrical good stuff was going to fall apart. And it was like, what do you think? Is it a good idea? And I kind of went, I think it's a cool idea, so let's make it happen, you know? And I think I definitely have a bit like that belief that, you know, throwing yourself into something, if something kind of scares you, I think I'm drawn towards that. You know, I relish a challenge, and actually, rather than avoiding things that scare me, I kind of head straight towards them. So I guess that's one of those kind of big scary things that I just kind of jumped into the deep end, and it ended up being an incredible moment.
I love that. Well, part of that is that mindset. We talk about that, and maybe it's being stubborn, but you know, it's kind of a success mindset that you have to have, and whether or not you're feeling it or not, you know, because you know, as creative types, we're hard on ourselves, and you know, these guys are very hard on themselves as well. So, what do you suppose it is that you keep in mind? Maybe they keep in mind that kind of keeps you on that right path, that keeps you focused even when things are tough.
Yeah, I think me and Brian kind of related a lot by discussing how like process was really important to both of us. Like I'm fascinated by process, and Brian actually there's a bit where he talks in the film about getting your hands dirty, getting like your hands and face, getting down in the mud, and like, you know, getting involved. And I think it's like, I think that's really at the heart of it, of like, you've got to just kind of get in there, get your hands dirty, and that's where you're gonna learn. As Brian says it, that's where you kind of find yourself, is in the mud, you know?
That's true. Well, is that what you're hoping people will get out of this? Because I think depending on, what people know about the group or how much they like them, or they may get something different out of it. What are you hoping they'll take away from this?
I think I'm hoping the film's kind of like this continuation of a conversation that the band's been having since, their first kind of release in 96. And I feel like what I'm hoping is this conversation that we've kind of drawn other individuals into in the film continues after the cinema. People, it makes people kind of talk and start to have dialogue beyond the film. I think that's really the goal that I hope for it.
That's beautiful. Well, last thing after this, I can't wait to see what you got next for us. What do you have coming up?
So I've got a couple of films that are coming up. There's a concert film with a band called Biffy Clyro, a Scottish rock band, and also there's a feature called These Violent Delights, which should be coming out next year.
That's wonderful. Well, we definitely appreciate your time, all the great work that you're doing, and can't wait to see those other films. But for now, we're going to tell everyone to check this out. I know it's playing at the Texas Theater here. We're going to tell everyone to check out a beautiful film. And of course, we love the music, and can't wait for everything that comes next.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time. Okay, bye-bye.